Now talking about Ryokan. He was a very, very highly revered monk, and it said at the young age of 13 that he had become a vegetarian, and he honored all the 5 major precepts of Buddhism. Ryokan Ninsho studied Shingon Ritsu doctrine at Saidaichi Temple. He became famous for numerous philanthropic social welfare projects, which included the building of hospices for the care of the sick and invalid, roads and other civil engineering projects. Ryokan challenged Nichiren to pray for rain in June of 1271 during the Great Drought. Nichiren Shonin's prayers brought rain, but Ryokan's did not. After his defeat, Ryokan used his influence within the Kamakura government to have Nichiren Shonin arrested and exiled. They attempted to behead him at Tatsunokuchi, but in the end sent him on his second exile to Sado Island. For many years afterwards, he continued to openly and covertly harass and persecute not only Nichiren Shonin, but also his disciples and lay believers. In 1281, Gokurakuji was designated an official prayer temple for the government by the 5th regent, Hojo Tokiyori. For centuries throughout Japan, there were 3 protective sutras which were used to govern the nation in order to assure stability and prosperity. And of these 3, this included the Lotus Sutra. This can illustrate to you the importance, traditionally in Japanese history and society, of the standing of the Lotus Sutra. Also, as you know, the very first constitution ever formed in the world by Prince Shotoku was based on the Buddhist ideals found within the Lotus Sutra. He tried to translate the spirit and heart of the Lotus Sutra into compassionate ways to govern the nation, to assure stability and also bring about prosperity. Another interesting point that we need to point out. Earlier I spoke of the founding fathers, or the founding monks of the various Kamakura temples and of the various Kamakura Buddhist movements. One thing we need to underline also is that the founding monks of all of these Kamakura schools had all been practitioners of the Lotus Sutra, because they had all been originally Tendai monks. They had all gone to Mount Hiei, to Enryakuji Temple, where they received the same training and education as Nichiren Shonin did. So Nichiren Shonin looked upon these priests not as monks of different traditions per se, but he looked upon them as fellow Tendai priests who had abandoned many of the practices and traditions of the school from whence they came. Nichiren Daishonin, to give you an idea of how the Lotus Sutra was perceived at that time, wrote in his writing, Buddhahood Through the Lotus Sutra, if one uses the Lotus Sutra to pray for the welfare of the land, it will prove to be a great pure Dharma for the safety and protection of the nation, ensuring joy and prosperity to everyone, from the ruler on down to the common people. So I think you can understand, with the formation of these new Buddhist schools and movements, where they were turning their backs on the Lotus Sutra, Nichiren Shonin felt a bit, well, to say the least, alarmed and concerned. However, the entire situation became much more grave when these newly formed schools, with their new traditions, including the rejection of the Lotus Sutra, and sometimes even the rejection of the Buddha Shakyamuni as the original master of Buddhism, began their alliance with the newly formed military government. So with that, these temples, along with the government itself, were officially rejecting the Lotus Sutra. This made the situation in Nichiren Shonin's eyes even much more terrible. Therefore, when Nichiren Shonin wrote and submitted his writing, Rissho Ankoku Ron, which is, the translation of which is called the treatise to create a prosperous and tranquil nation based first on establishment of the true teachings of Buddhism, you can probably understand why the government and these temples then considered his treatise to be such a threat. With the Rissho Ankoku Ron, he not only questioned the school's stances, but he proved the invalidity of their new take on Buddhism. He also criticized the military government's official participation in these schools to work together officially to create a new form of do-it-yourself style of Buddhism. For him, it was a distortion. All the while, lending very little effort to really help the people who were greatly suffering at the time.